Good evening, praise God, and welcome to another Word Up Bible study at Shiloh Baptist Church. Of course, I'm Pastor Dunkins, and things are exciting tonight. My better half is arriving and coming up on the stage. Y'all give her a hand as she comes up. And we're going to talk about why she's just running up in here now because of the realities of life and what happens in life. So tonight, let somebody know. I need you to reach out, call someone, let somebody know tonight, right now. Unfortunately, we're only on YouTube tonight. So if someone's looking for us on Facebook, we're doing some updating of some things. And there's one of our old broadcasts is on Facebook. This broadcast will be replayed on Facebook, but tonight you got to go to YouTube. So go into YouTube. Our hashtag is SBC Praise Church. And when you go to SBC Praise Church, you will be able to find us. But if you look on this stage, you see I got some lovely looking, smiling saints of God with me here tonight. And we're going to talk about something that's happening to everyone, that's going to affect everyone, and that is marriage. You'll notice our title is Marriage in Motion, celebrating Christian marriage. What are God's principles to marriage? How do you maintain a good Christian marriage? We have several couples here that are in all different stages of marriage. The demographics of their marriage relates to something you're going through out there. So I need you to hear that. That's why we chose these couples, because it'll let you know you can make it also. So I'll start all the way across from us. I have Deacon John Cross and his lovely wife, Valerie Cross. They are here tonight, and they are a couple that represents a couple that has too much to do. Yes. They are parenting. He has his own business. She works full-time, and both of them have full-time ministry here at the church. My wife saw me. Both of them have full-time ministry here at the church, and they parent. So we're going to talk about how do you do that without getting on each other's nerves? How do you stay together? How long have you guys been married?
18 years.
18 years. So we're going to hear some truth with that. Next we have, of course, you recognize, my ace here, Pastor Cato Brown, assistant pastor at the church, his lovely wife, Cindy Brown. They come with a very unique story also, background that you can understand. Cindy is divorced. And, of course, Pastor Brown was divorced and remarried to Pastor Brown. And Pastor Cato Brown is a widower. And he has a very interesting story on that. But how did they get together and work out the situation where they could stay together? How long have you guys been married?
10 years. We've been together 11, married 10.
We don't want to know no illegal stuff. just give me.
I just want to remind everybody to use your mics so that it can be picked up on YouTube.
Okay. And also we have sitting here one of the assistant chairman of our deacon board, his lovely wife, China Jones and Mont Jones. And China is one of our active members and leaders in the church. Matter of fact, one of the pastor's favorites. She does whatever I ask her to do. So I praise God for China. And they have an interesting story tonight. Lamont, again, is a business owner. They come together as a blended family, but also they're raising their grandchildren in the midst of that. So with all that, and China also is a working parent and working wife. So all of us in here, you see that there is that added. So how long have you guys been married?
17 years. 17
years, is that correct, China?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Praise the Lord.
And of course, you know, Marcia and I, my lovely wife here, this is my road dog, this is the one I've been with, how many years now?
A lot.
How many?
42.
42 years. Yes, right. We're the old guys in the bunch. But I love her more every day. We fight more every day. But
like today.
I'm going to teach you guys how to fight. We try to be real with you. So understand this is what marriage is about. So first of all, let's start. Let's start by asking the question, how did you guys meet? How did you get together? Anyone can start.
You want your version or my version?
Tell it out.
Okay. So basically, everything started here at Shiloh Baptist Church. At the time, she was your secretary. And I remember I was here for like 5 years. So I was sitting in the overflow. Me and God would just talk and have conversations. So I said, God, okay, I've been here 5 years. I'm working in the ministry. Doing what I think you want me to do. I said, okay, God, I'm ready for a wife. So I said, okay, God, can you give me a saved woman? So God said no. I said no. He said, I'm not going to give you a saved woman. I'm going to give you a God-fearing woman. He said, because there's some things a saved woman will do and know that I will forgive her. But there will be some things that a God-fearing woman won't do because she knows consequences behind it. So, again, because she was your secretary at the time, I was back there. I remember everything like yesterday. She came walking in, and God said, that's your wife. I said, her? And God said, that's your wife. He said, I want you to tell her that I said that she's going to be your wife.
That's very scary. So you heard God's voice tell you. Now, I need you to understand something, guys. A lot of us in here, we can see, when we talk about it, you're going to see God in these situations. But go ahead, John.
So I said, okay, God, so you want me to walk up to her and tell her that I want to marry her. And God said, no, that's not what I said. He said, go tell her I said that she's going to be your wife.
Well, let's cut to the chase here. This is getting scary. Val, did he say that to you?
Wait, let me finish.
Go ahead.
This is where it gets good. So I go to Val, right, and I said, Val, God said for me to tell you that you're going to be my wife.
I would recommend this to everybody.
She said, he didn't tell me that.
Wait a minute, Val. So you said God didn't tell me that. So I want to hear where Val was in that moment. So where were you when this was happening?
Well, in that moment, I really don't think we really had a relationship.
Oh, you didn't know that, though?
Not
even a
like
friendship?
that, no. So I definitely was like, no, God didn't tell me that. And it took a while, but I will say that I always tell John, I thank God that God spoke to him. Because he is definitely the man that God, and I'm the woman that God created for him. And our stories, ultimately, when God took the blinders off of my eyes, was during a difficult time in my life. And I always say, whenever I would have dreams, right, and I was in trouble in my dream, John would always be the person in my dreams.
So let's talk about the spirituality of this, guys. Listen to this. Because the reality, well, the reality is, let's talk about the spiritual implications. You know that's what happened to Adam. God gave him Eve. I believe there's an element in all of our relationships that we understand, especially when you started out the spirituality, putting God at the top of the priority. But think about something, and then when Thou said, and finally, with your persistence, finally, God spoke to her heart. So this is letting somebody know, if you know that God has spoken to you about a person, don't think it's going to be easy. That's what I want to say. Now, talk about the difficulty of y'all getting together, even though God has spoken to you. There were some difficult times, right?
Yeah, even in the beginning, you all know Miss Ella. I remember the day Miss Ella came into the sound room, right? And she asked to borrow a pen. Right? I said, okay, so I gave her the pen. I said, Miss Ella, you know I'm going to marry Val. She said, oh, you are, honey? I was like, yeah. So by the time she got to the door, she said, dang fool, you ain't going to marry no Val.
So did you guys have any spiritual, so Val, you said it was a tough time in your life. Talk about, was it part of your spiritual development? Was there an attack going on? What was a tough time for you?
It was, my Uncle Rufus was in the hospital. And it was difficult because, he was dying. And I'm walking through the halls trying to get my thoughts together, and I see John. He's walking opposite of where I am. And at that moment, I was like, that's my husband. Just like that.
And so everything flipped. So you guys heard from God. All right. Cindy and Kato. Bet you didn't know God talking to you. Let's find out. So how did you guys, now this is, we all know you guys. Both of you been here a while. So how did you guys get together? Talk to somebody about your particular situations. How did it happen?
Well, for me, my story, after Stephanie left, I was not looking for anybody.
So let's make this plain to the congregation. Pastor Brown was widowed early. He was widowed, and his wife passed away. A good friend of all of ours, my cousin actually, part of this church, and a very good person. He was widowed, and at that point, devastated. Talk about it.
So I was like, I'm going to stay away from people for a while. I didn't want to bother with anybody I was at work one day though, and well, before that, I don't know what happened, but I started noticing that Cindy was looking kind of good.
Okay.
And I don't even know why that came up. Because we've been around each other forever, it seemed like, you know, and I never took a look at her like that before, never. And I said, what the heck is she doing? She going to the gym? She doing something? Look, her skin looking good?
So none of this was spiritual.
None of this was spiritual.
I'm just asking.
I'm just looking, I'm like, okay, all right. But I wasn't interested.
Wow.
I wasn't interested. I just said, you know, she looked good. And one day at work, God started speaking to me. I was kind of angry with God, and finally I got to a place where I said, okay, it is what it is. I got to accept it, and I'm going to go ahead and try to move on and live my life, you know, regardless. And even in saying that, that wasn't easy. But I was sitting there, and I was praying and talking to God, and all of a sudden he told me that Cindy was going to be my wife. I said, excuse me? I didn't really believe what I was hearing, because I'm like, I never looked at her like that before. Now it's like you're telling me that I'm supposed to marry Cindy.
So this is interesting. So Cindy, in your correspondence, while this was going on, what was God saying to you? How did you play into this picture?
I wasn't looking for anyone. I was preparing myself for when God blessed me with someone, but I wasn't looking for anyone. Cato came to me, he said he had been watching me for like 4 months, and I was like, really? Like I didn't think that he was looking at me because we were so different. And my mind was focused. I was going from Violent Church to Port Norris Church, and I was just focused on God. And when he did say something to me, I said, you want to talk to me? Because I just didn't think that I was his type because we were so different. I'm a people person, like always talking and, you know, doing different things, and he was real quiet to himself. And then a person on my job, when I was telling her that I handed my paper and I had to minister somewhere, and when I told Pastor Brown at the time, I said, I called you about my paper, and he said, you called me? And I was like, yeah, like, you know. And so to make a long story short, the person on my job said, I think he likes you. And I said...
So let's get back, we focusing on people, because y'all do all this love stuff. What we're talking about here now is really how God had an impact in your relationship. We've seen that, I never knew this from either one of you. I knew part of your story as pastor, but to know the emphasis to the extent that God was involved in it. Let's move to
it. Absolutely, but it was all God in this situation, because again, I was not looking, as Cindy said, she wasn't looking. And all of a sudden,
and you weren't recovered yet.
I wasn't recovered yet. So.
And China, I went to China too, and she said, "You've been wanting a godly man," because I was afraid to date him because I knew him, and I said, "I don't want to marry anybody else that I know coming out of a really bad divorce. I didn't want to marry anybody else I knew." So then when he did finally approached me, I went to Val because her and Stephanie were such good friends. I went to her first because I didn't want anyone saying that I was dating him, and I told him.
So let's talk about that, because we're going to move on to a couple things. But that is real in the sense that those are the kind of things. Let's talk about some stuff, guys. You guys can identify with this. We've heard several principles of marriage. Number one, God should be first. Number two, don't let outside folk interfere with what God is telling you. Somebody hear me? If you listen to people, go ahead, honey, you want to say anything? If you listen to people, people can't be dictating to you who you should be with. Anything? Okay, because she's kind of sorry for that. China and Lamont, how'd you guys meet? Go ahead.
It wasn't in church. That's quite all right.
So
we weren't either.
Go ahead.
On our way there.
Okay, all right.
Right. So, I was the president of a motorcycle club.
Which mic up a little bit?
I was the president of a motorcycle club, and so was William. And part of my bylaws was we couldn't date anyone in the community. And they told me I had to take that out of my bylaws because they were grown women. I couldn't tell them what to do, so we took it out, but I still wanted to live by the bylaws. So he was chasing me for a while, and because I didn't want to go against something I really believed in. But you were. So
Riding behind.
Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
So I was like, well, what is this? This is the guy I'm supposed to marry, and avoiding him because of a bylaw in my, that wasn't even existing because we had to take it out because my members wasn't in agreement because they said they were grown. But that was just trying to hold up my motorcycle club's reputation. I didn't want them dating a lot of men in the community. But anyway, so I was saved, and we were like in two separate worlds, but like when we would go out, I wouldn't dance. I was just promoting my club. I would just go like to all the community.
So you knew the Lord and you did. Lamont?
Yeah.
I knew the Lord,
Yeah,
but I knew my flesh at that time.
right. But and then make a long story short, we started dating, and we secretly got married in 2004. Nobody knew.
Why did you get married?
I'm gonna let her tell first.
Well, you tell me, why did y'all get married? Why did you guys get married? Secret.
Because I didn't want to be fornicating.
I wanted you to say
That's
that.
why I didn't want to be fornicating.
Everything we're talking about is how your marriage is. Whether you know it or not, whether it's coincidental, you guys are lining your lives up with Scripture. These things are the things you got to look at, that there are consequences for everything we do, and our heart is what God reads. So you're just telling me where your heart was. Where was your heart, Lamont?
At the time, almost parallel with John and Kayla, because I wasn't looking. She wasn't looking. I didn't think I was the marrying type because I didn't want to be with anybody because I was doing other things. I didn't want to be tied down and bothered. And I got to say, it was God that spoke to me because, you know that cliche, when you know, there's no rhyme or reason for it. It was different things that was coming up. Instead of phone calls, we sent emails, or I'm calling to check on her, or she calling to check on me. This wasn't, she gave the PG version. It wasn't motorcycle related because we had conversation outside, and it was different. Both of us would stand up and what's going on? We can't be doing this. But then we just got around one another more and more, and we like lined up parallel, like morals, values, things of that nature. And it was
We were
different.
friends for about a year before we
So now let's get
We had to be friends.
Okay, so let's get down to that piece. I need you guys to understand something. And we're not going to talk about how we met. People already know, that you were chasing me. So
That was not true.
I'm just
I
kidding.
couldn't stand you when we first met.
That's the truth.
We fought like cats and dogs every day.
But watch this.
I was his boss.
Well, wait a minute. Watch this. So how did we go on a date?
This blew me away. Because I was strictly flesh. I'm not going to lie. I had no God in me. And I had God in me, but I was
You gotta watch.
kicking him to the back burner to satisfy other things.
Yeah, Marcia, just move on.
So, he took me out on a date.
No.
Which date?
No. Let's back up to you chasing me.
I ain't chasing you.
So who saw who on the basketball court?
Oh,
let's not tell. Let's leave that alone. Let's move on.
I gotta tell
No, we can't tell that story. That's not
You
gonna,
can't tell
it's
that
not relevant to marriage now. I gotta get to this. We don't have
Oh, yeah,
enough
it is, because you
Well-
still got that bad.
time. We will tell
I
that.
saw him on a basketball court. Okay? He had his shirt off.
Oh, Lord. Guys, please
And
don't
I
listen to this.
didn't see his face. I just saw
Hey,
his
come on.
back. And I said, oh my God. With a back like that, what could I do?
And so what happened is when I
Okay.
yeah. So let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
But
We're trying to help
ultimately,
folk out.
I am,
Yeah, well,
but
that's
ultimately,
I help you.
we went on a date. He was a perfect gentleman. And I knew him as a dog. But he was a perfect gentleman. I mean, he opened the car door and he wooed me.
So let me talk about that because we got to get to everybody here this hour. Watch this, guys. Part of marriage stages. You said something, all of you. Differences attract, whether you know it or not. And here's why differences attract: because we see things in our partner we don't understand. But here's the problem: the differences we overlook when we're first coming together. So if somebody wants to go to somebody with a basketball game, we'll go. Somebody wants to go to a dance recital. Somebody wants to go eat ice cream. We don't like ice cream. We do things as we're growing together where we don't notice the differences. But then marriage happens. And as we get into marriage, the differences start becoming a problem. So let's talk about some real stuff. John and Val, I'll start back over with you. The arguments, the fights that you've had to mediate through, how did you handle that? What are some of the tough things you guys have had to deal with to really keep your marriage together? I'll let you go first, John.
Bills.
So talk about it. So money.
Yes.
Bills.
Money.
Okay.
Because see, Val is like walk the straight line. Like me, I'm like, we'll pay that later. But see, like I would ask my wife, what do you want for Christmas? My bills paid. What do you want for birthday? My house paid off. And Pastor, I'm just being honest, that is my issue. You know what I mean? And I know my weak points and my strong points. That's why she got an 800 credit score, I don't. You know what I mean? But one of us has to be grounded in every situation in order to make it balance. And see, like, but my brain is like crazy because she'll come to me and I say, well, how much is the bills for this month? She'll be like, $8,500? I'm like, for this month, $8,500? I said, what do we leave, move to the side of the home? I don't know about it. And then she'd be like, you bought it.
So let me say something here, because I need to understand this. So Val, did these fights, I mean, it sounds funny and stuff, did they ever get real? I mean, where it was like maybe not talking, or maybe, you know, I don't know if this is the right thing. Talk about how these things made you feel. That's where people are.
So yes, so for me, number one, I'm a law enforcement officer that has to do a background check every 5 years for my credit, right? So it not only impacts, just our relationship, but it also impacts, I'm a human resources administrator, so I discipline staff for not paying their bills. So for me, it's very serious, and it was something that I would take walks. That's how I would try to avoid blowing up. After, of course, I let him know how I feel about it. And then all the conversations like, why do I have to go through this every month? And you tell me to tell you how much they are. I tell you, and then you don't say anything, and then I got to come back. Jesus. So what I had to learn was, I used to, of course, pray, but then while I'm praying, I would just walk around the block just to try to, calm down so it would not explode. But yes, there was times when it got very explosive because I didn't feel like he was taking it as serious as me.
Okay, so the reality is that that's what I'm looking at. Believe it or not, we say something that's a little thing, but it could have been something that drove you guys apart. Many people are split up. And people say, is it because of too much money or not enough money? It doesn't make a difference. If the argument is money, it has to do with a part of us, right, that deal with that. What are some of the arguments you guys have had to deal with? How do you guys, what are the big arguments you guys have had to deal with? How do you handle it? Now, one thing Val just said, taking walks, thinking through it before you blow up. That is a great advice to somebody. And usually better heads, especially if you talk to God, can take over. Go ahead.
Some of our arguments were the same: finances, affection. I'm a very affectionate person.
Pastor, don't watch your face.
Hey, go ahead.
And I had to, learn his love language. But I'm a very touchy-feely person. And but in the beginning of our marriage, we were fussing a lot because we were paying 2 mortgages. And Cato really didn't think us paying, at the time, us paying 2 mortgages was affecting me because it was him paying the mortgage at his house. But it was affecting me because if he didn't have to pay that mortgage, we could have used that money in.
So did you guys have arguments about money?
Sometimes, yes.
So what are some of the other things, Cato, that you felt you guys had to get through to maintain your marriage? That's what this is about.
Okay. Yeah, we had arguments about finances because when I go to look at the bank account, I'm looking at things that are being bought that I didn't think was necessary. All right? And so, you know, initially when we first came, we had our kids staying at the house, and it was a mess. Should have never done it. We learned through, you know, a process. I learned that we can't have our kids living on our property because they're not going to pay consistently. They don't need to be there. But that's something we have to go through. Now, what the situation is, if the bills, I'm looking at the money and I turn around and see X amount of dollars is going in because I know I just put my check in the bank, and then I look and then there's money going out that I think is unnecessary, there's a problem.
So here's what I want to get to. Couples come in and they argue to the point that we're sitting here talking about this now in a what I call clean environment. But what were the feelings like in the house, and how did you get to the point that you guys forgave or was able to handle that period?
Well, did we do it?
Y'all still married?
I think we still there. The reality is we both had to learn that there's things that upset us.
There you go.
And because I didn't want her to be upset about certain things, I'll go ahead and try to, minimize what I do, so we go ahead and give her room to be able to do what she needs to do. And then I looked and noticed that she started changing some things so that when I look at the account, I'm not going crazy about it. She started thinking about, look, I'm paying this, I'm paying that. And so she'll tell me everything that she's doing, so then I'll know, at least she's trying to be responsible.
So both of you then felt, and that's what, I'll just give you this, guys. One of the things love is, sometimes people say when they come in to see me, they say love means respect. But, love really means one clear-cut word, responsibility. I am responsible for my actions to this person. And a lot of times we don't want to be responsible for our actions because we're grown, we're individuals. So we don't want anybody to tell us what to do.
Can I tell them about our money story?
Well, no. I want to get to the couples. Let's get to what they're doing. We're tonight we're monitoring. We're not telling our stuff. Okay, so China and Lamont, what are some of the tough things you guys have had to deal with and maybe still dealing with? What are some of the tough things that you would say that could help somebody out there who's going through it?
They don't want to tell too much. Okay, are we going to say that or not say that?
Even looking at the questions, it's an ongoing process with certain situations. And it's continuing to praying and just really trying to follow God's word to make better decisions.
So in all of these, starting with John and down around, you guys saw God in your solution. But that God helped you create the solution. What do you see?
Not at first. God may have been there, but during those moments, we didn't talk. Because it got that bad as far as, mostly I think was finances. I was honestly, I thought me and John was like twins. Mm-hmm. And Val and China, because she do the books and checks this and this, and I'm like, we get to that later. And again, that's why her credit is plus and mine is all right. But what I would say, it took time because we both are stubborn people. That's one thing.
Okay.
And we had to admit two Brahma bulls really can't bump heads. She and I was
Strong-minded, too strong.
We was just going
personality.
ahead.
Strong will.
So it took and we're still going through. It's not as bad because God intervened.
I like that. Now you're talking.
Because
what
when religion transpired, she wasn't backing out what she believed in, or at that point, and I wasn't moving my position. But God had to come in there, prayer, meditating, compromise, and communicate. Then honestly, we had to start communicating.
So did you ever get to the point where, now watch this, guys, here's a magic word I hear all the time when couples come in. I love him, but I'm not in love with him. Or I love her, but I'm not still in love with her. Anybody know?
Or how about the one, I love him, but I don't like.
Yeah, like that. So did you ever get to the point where there were some repulsed feelings, where there were feelings where you guys were really angry at each other?
Yes.
And so, you guys,
See, again, me from my opinion, I don't think we've ever got to that point, because this has always been the love of my life. You know what I mean? But, and one thing that with us, I don't care how mad we get, we don't cross the line. Like, we don't call each other names, we don't say this, you know, we don't do that. And no matter what happens, we still handle our responsibilities.
And the other thing is we talk about a lot, when we went through counseling with you,
yeah,
and some of the advice that you gave to us, I remember the one about, cutting grass. And, basically everybody's lawn needs mowing. And then our marriage can be a pool, like a swimming pool or a cesspool. It's what we remember all of that. And like he said, so we try to remember those things even when you're arguing.
So let's talk about that, because what you guys are saying, even though you guys may have had what I would call a primary approach, they still, and I need us to know this, the good thing about what you guys are saying is you've been through all of that, you're going through it, and that's what this marriage is about. How do I keep going through that? And does God make it better? Because you guys look tonight like you're better, even though I see you talking about it going back, but you're better. How did you get better? That's what people need to know.
It's funny you mentioned like going back. I think for us, we've always moved forward, but it was hard to revisit some of those conversations that need to be done. Meaning, like whether the finance, our kids' situation or whatever. And again, we had to go, not necessarily our separate ways, but she had to go talk to the man upstairs during her time. And I definitely had to go have my time. That's what all helps. Because if you're not getting orders from God, it's not gonna be fruitation.
All right, so China, a woman feels different than a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the time that you were felt hurt, how did you handle that you're still going forward?
But really prayer. Because if I did it by my flesh, we wouldn't still be together. Because
So you turned it over to God.
Right. In addition, I just realized, like, when he's at his worst is when his business is not going good. And it took me a while to put it together. Because when he's okay, we're really okay. Like, he's not grumpy or in the dumps. And because he wanted to do so much. He wanted to do so much for me to make me happy. And I tell him, I don't need all that. I'm simple. But in his head, he wants to do all he can to make me smile, make me look good. Because he gets me things I don't even think about getting. But him, he loves to see me look good, And I realized that,
I don't just say her, my wife is a gift from God.
So let's stop now. So you guys throwing out all kind of biblical principles. Let's recap. All this is biblical. First of all, John, you just said, and we're going to go back to you, both of you, in this situation. The Bible tells us to treat our wife as that weaker vessel, to put our wife on those pedestals, to love our wife. I always tell you guys, prophet, priest, and king of your house. Prophet, you're the one supposed to be bringing God, right? You're the one that intercedes, right? Priest, you intercede on behalf of your family for God. You're the one that says we would take it to prayer. And then, of course, the king provide. So I hear you saying that through your thinking, you also, you forgot about this, right? But this is where people get when they come to argue. They forget where you guys started. I believe God put us together, and I'm going to fight to stay together. That's what I hear you guys saying. And even as pastors, right, and ministers, we'll come back. You guys have had some horrific fights. Has been any times of not talking? So talk about, I mean, like, you know, where you really had to deal with those situations. What do you do in those times, and what made you keep going forward?
You know, I found out for me, I could be immature. I'm just gonna be straight up. There's times when I get mad. I can be mad. I'm like, all right, you stay over there. Just leave me alone. Go to sleep, whatever. You know. But Cindy, I gotta give her props. She'll come out and say something trying to make me laugh. She'll do something silly, you know, just to try to minimize the tension in the house. She knows that I'm upset about something. And sometimes it may be her and then maybe a situation. And because of my immaturity, I come and I bring it in. I'm like, look, I just don't feel like being bothered. And she'll feel her way through and figure out how to get me out of it without even really pushing it to get me out of it. So, I mean.
So she learned how to back up a little bit, give you your space, and then create an atmosphere of peace and love so that you would come out of it.
Do you know that I never hear any of you say you took your husband's man? You know, so talk about, you know, even when William made you the worst, you call him William, I call him Mom, but when he made you the worst, you still respected him as the husband, as the head of the house, as a man, right? You didn't try to take that from him.
Well, it took me a while because I was a single parent for a long time.
Okay.
So I was used to making all the decisions, you know, fixing things, like I had to wear all the hats. So it took me a while to let him
that's good.
be the head of the household. You know, I was used to making decisions by myself, doing whatever I wanted to do. So it took me a while, really, to get there.
Like not ask, not that you really have to ask, but even get their opinion about what you're getting ready to do or trying to do.
So
that was one of my issues.
So, and that's part of fun, you should say that, because I found out what Cato just said. Most men, like we all brothers here, we can admit that. Soon as my wife is unhappy, I'm unhappy. I could have been mad as all get out, but as soon as I see her sad, if God starts dealing with my mind, what did you say? What did you do? That's what I found, that I could be selfish, or I try to fix that situation because as the man, I'm supposed to make that happen. John?
And my biggest issue is that she's always right. And I don't mean like she act like she's always right, but she is always right. And I get mad because I have to agree that she's always right. And she may not want me to say this, but honestly, like we have arguments and we have our moments and we get mad. But Pastor, I'm being honest, when she get out of the shower and walk through the room, I say, I gotta fix this.
Okay, so
I understand that conversation.
So again, guys, that's the part we're trying to be real here, and the reality. But look, and that's what. Hey, what did Adam say when he saw Eve? I mean, same thing. God made those differences so we could treat each other differently. But as a man of the house, I was trying to put the point in that I know men, and you said it. You can't call people names and then expect to live with them. You can't put a woman down. When I always tell people that women are the receptors, you know, in the sense, I'm not going to be, you know, we're on the air tonight Bible study, but a woman, when a woman loves you, they love hard. They open up, drop every bit of themselves for you. That's why, you know, when people say a woman says no is a big deal to a woman, because no means that emotionally, mentally, physically, they're not feeling that. So you're invading them. But when they open up to you and say, you're the one, that is a pleasure that God has created that there's nothing like. There's nothing like it. So these arguments, if we would put them in the respect that we treated each other to the point that we evaluate ourselves. I heard Val say, I think when I go for a walk, I also let God think me so I don't blow up. If we learn to control ourselves, we will be able to come back from the argument. Will you fight? Yeah. This time, I can give you 7 times when you need a good fight. You know when you need a good fight? When y'all in the house and one person ain't talking. It's time for a good fight. Because y'all need to get some communication going, or that thing's going to get worse and worse and worse. A good fight is when one person starts leaving and stop telling the other person where they're going. Time for a good fight. Because your relationship is dying when you don't believe those things. Me and Marcia, she went, and why she's late tonight, so we gonna tell our part now.
Oh, yeah, because that was an argument.
Yeah, so our daughter came in from London. Our daughter has a car here when she comes to see her grandmother. And we both love our daughters. We with her today, say goodbye and all that. But she had to go to the airport because she leaves her car here. And I asked her, I said, hey, now how do you get to the airport? Oh, Dad, I already reserved my Uber. Okay.
And what did I say?
No, you didn't say anything at that point. She said, I got an Uber. And I'm thinking, well, that's good because me and your mom got this. You know, sometimes she overextend herself. So we good. She said, well, Mom says she wants to take me. I said, this is your mom, know you got the Uber. What the call I get? I get a call at 5 o'clock. On the way back from the airport, it just took ringing. And I need you to run home and grab this for me. I said, honey, I'm already at the church. She said, oh, I didn't know. I'll get there when I get there. But then I said to her, I knew what she said to me. I wanted to take my daughter.
And the biggest issue about that was, and this is actually how this came about, was the sacrifice I had to make the last time she was home. The last time she was home, I didn't get to spend hardly any time with her because we had church things to do. And as leaders in church, sometimes you have to divide and conquer, but then there are other times when, even though it hurts, you have to stick together. And I just know that hurt me so bad that I wasn't giving this one up.
So let's talk about this interesting conversation. Children. Let's talk about that. How do our children factor into some of the maneuvers and some of the compromising we have to do? Now, Val, you guys are a parent. Well, not late, but later in your life. So how does Jahani figure into you guys' situation? Because she got to go places, both of you are busy. John's always down here with his pastor. Go, John. So how do you guys maneuver through those things? And I got some stuff, so I better tell the truth, because I got some arguments you're going to call back before. So go ahead.
I will say, honestly, John is great with that.
Okay.
I have a very demanding job. I can go into work and get called into a meeting, and I work in Philadelphia, so Jahani has to be picked up from school. His schedule is a little bit more flexible than mine, but he has a lot of responsibility as well. So just today, as a matter of fact, I called him and I said, hon, typically I work from home on Thursdays, so I take Jahani to school, but I need to be at work tomorrow. So I called him and I said, hon, do you have anything to do in the morning? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, okay. But he said, I will change it. I said, no, I will change it. I will, because he typically will, because of his flexibility, make that sacrifice. And then we always just try to make it work, because when he wins, I win. And when I win, he wins. So if he has an appointment, well, I'm going to make that sacrifice, because ultimately it helps Jahani and me and our whole, household. So we just kind of fit in.
And so those are the sacrifices. Now, Kato and Cindy, you guys had blended family, but you had adult children, right? When you got together. So what are some of the things you've had to overcome? Because there's, you guys have church responsibility, the kids are here and there. So what are some of the things that you've had to deal with? And that's what people need to understand. How do I deal with that? Yeah, he said, go ahead, be honest, tell everything. He can handle it.
Some of the things that we had to overcome were, like, mainly my daughters. We went through a lot with my first marriage. So I went to church a lot and rushed them to grow up, and I missed a lot of time with my girls. So I see different behavior habits that I tolerate that Cato doesn't tolerate. But I tolerate it because sometimes it was out of guilt. of not being there, then sometimes.
So how do you and Kato rectify those times? Kato, do you give in, or what normally happens?
No, I don't give in. Not when the kids are wrong. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But what I learned to do is her daughters are my daughters. That's how I look at it. When you marry someone and they have kids already, whether it be grown or little kids, you got to know that they came from her. They're part of her. So therefore, they're part of us now. And so when I look at them, I don't look at them as like, okay, my stepkids or anything like that. I look at them as my daughters. And so if my daughters are going to, if one of them get out of control or say something out of the way, I'm going to treat them just like I would my boys. Like my daughter who's my flesh and blood.
So you showed them your love for them and care, and both of you then come together on parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And Kato has never, ever called any of my daughters his stepchildren. Never from day one. I was the one had to get used to saying our sons because I wasn't used to saying like our sons. But he
Can I stop
never
you, Cindy, because that is so profound.
He never.
I need you to understand this as you're listening. I don't know what your situation is living, but understand something. These are real sacrifices that you make out of love and out of concern. A marriage is not going to work itself. You have to make it work. As good as anybody seems up here, we have had to work to make these situations work. Even you guys. Now, you guys are a little different. You had the same thing, China, your daughters, your kids, but now you guys are raising grandkids together. How did y'all get to that point? And what were some of the difficulties you had to do with kids?
And communion wine. No, we're playing.
Well, how was it? China, go ahead.
What with our adult kids?
Yeah.
Like I never even knew how special they were to him because he's like real stern and what they would say mean.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of our household, nobody would even know they were his stepchildren. Like he had his, the kids' pictures on his desk, and he had hired my cousin to work with him up north somewhere. But anyway,
No more.
he would talk about them as like he never said step either. They was always his daughters.
You know, it's funny you say that. My driver, every time he talked about the girls, he would say our kids. I never heard him say China's kids. He would say, he'd be talking about something you guys going through, he'd say, but our kids. He would never say your kids. I just thought about that.
Right, but the thing about it though, even though he's like rough around the edges, and how like they're not
All kids have problems.
yes, they would say my stepdad, but he never refers to them but you would never know that.
How did you guys get the grandkids to raise the grandkids?
A lot of prayer. Because that's a subject where, I'm going to say this. I was a bad parent.
Come on.
What I mean by bad parent, but as a man, we provide, we go this, career, whatever. So I wasn't really around. But they still was kids. Talking about my kids. So then we had the blended family. We still working, doing, providing, what have you. I'm still out working. The grands look at it as a blessing. This is the second coming of how to be a parent. Still don't know how to be a parent, but hands-on, besides my wife, I didn't do all this. We're talking about ground zero. So there was no intermittent or just from ground zero. From the hospital, almost from the womb.
You guys have had grandkids.
So
So let me ask you the question. So all of this stemmed down from your marriage. You guys, everybody gets the emphasis of this, that we're talking two people, godly people, letting God be in their relationship, are able to handle the storms, because nobody's got perfect kids, nobody's got perfect, you're gonna have the ups and downs, the money trouble, everything's gonna happen, illnesses, but it seems like you guys have learned, and I hope that's what you see when marriage is in motion, You have to learn how to deal with, under that umbrella, you got to start with God put us together, and with God we can handle anything. Go ahead.
And I do want to acknowledge Ashley,
That's right.
because Ashley, actually we had Candace and Ashley at
So
one
you got to
point.
let people know that's John's children, right?
Right, but this is the thing, when I never envisioned myself as being a mother, right? So I'm married, but I knew going into my marriage that I was marrying someone that had kids. I got married when I was older, so I was willing, to accept, his children, but they weren't living with me. The reality was Ashley came to live with us it was a spare moment. We were actually on our way to
Part of life.
my graduation, for my master's program. He wasn't able to be there because he got a call.
I had to pull over on the side of the highway and let them continue. I had to go a different direction.
And when I got home from the graduation, Ashley was sitting at our counter.
Wow, how did you guys get through
And I
that?
got thrust into being a mother.
But how did you guys get through them not making it to the graduation?
Well, because when she came, I laid down the law. And I explained to
It
her, I
was
said,
about the graduation.
I'm talking graduation.
It was a situation where we didn't have a choice. It was, without going into too many details, it was either he was going to come get his child, or his child was going to be, placed.
Okay, so let's talk about that. The real situation was, I'm with you, but he really did have a choice. He just made the right one. That's what I need. That's what I need people to see. Somebody who comes to me will say, "Well, I ain't have a choice." Somebody might be, "He didn't make it to my graduation. Well, he's going to put his child over me." You guys have just sat there and understood what makes marriages, and that is, you said it out. He didn't. That right there is understanding, because at that time you didn't even know, right, Ashley, in that sense. But you loved your husband enough that you were ready to do that. And John, you felt bad having to do that, correct?
exactly. But you have to make decisions, you know what I mean, at a spare moment. And you just do the best you can. Nobody's perfect.
Best you
Nobody
can.
Nobody has it all together. And I just want to share something very quickly in reference to Ashley. We had issues with Ashley. She had her moments and, situations and times.
Yes.
But I just want to very briefly just tell you about how God is. Now, Ashley got into an altercation with her mother, right? So the state troopers went and picked Ashley up, and just to, make this go quickly. So I had to she wanted me to get her a lawyer. I said, no, I'm not getting you a lawyer. You made this mess, I will take you to the public defender. So we go to the day, right? So the public defender looks at her, right? And he says, I'm looking at your dad, I'm looking at you, why are you in here? And he says, I only want you to answer that question. And then I said, she gets good grades in school, she does well, she just does dumb stuff. So he looked at her and said, why don't you go to college? She said, I want to. He said, if you want to go to college, here's my phone number right here. You call me tomorrow and I will get you in Delaware State. So Ashley called him the next day, and he got her in Delaware State. She just graduated 4 years from Delaware State. Listen, because she got in trouble. See, the enemy wanted to take her and rip her all apart, and God turns around and makes her good.
So another principle to marriage is the very stuff the devil used to try to tear us apart is what makes us fight to stay. When you have God in you, you'll fight to stay, and you'll use that and flip it. All the time you hear Marcia and I've written several books about this. We've been through some crazy stuff and those times helped us stay in God's will. I got the best. I got the best help meet God ever made. Sitting right here. That's on you. I'm just saying. No, I have the best. When I look at my shortcomings, I'm fanatic for God. I neglected my wife, and she'll tell you.
Not time to make it up.
she'll tell you. And one day she said to me, "Honey, you know what? You've given me everything I ever wanted." And that she don't know how that made me feel.
Except what?
A pool, swimming pool. She can't swim. Anyway, so I'm just letting you know that women, two things we need to understand. When a woman as men, when we see a woman, you talk about trying to get them stuff and want to make them look good and all that stuff. When you see a woman sticking with you like that, and you don't know, we love the comments from you. When you say stuff, it means different, right, brothers? I mean, it's when somebody else says it. When your wife says it to you, that's all you want. And women, what do you want? What do you need? What do you need?
Bills paid.
I mean, peace and just the tranquility of time, quality time. Not necessarily just quality time.
So let's talk about love languages, right? Let's close with this little exercise as we close tonight. Hope you guys, when you look at this, I'm going to try to put a little script to show you the biblical implications of everything we said tonight. But I hope the one word you heard out of everything with all the different situations is, if you put God first and you fight for it, but you can't give it up. You've heard all kinds of situations, and we have not tried to sugarcoat it. There's times we probably said, you make me sick, I want to leave, but we learned how to take that to God. So here are love languages. So Val and John. First you, John, what is Val's love language? Let me give it to you. Quality time, caring actions, affection, appreciating words, or presence. Give me.
Quality time.
Quality time. Val, is that yours?
Yes.
What is John?
Absolutely.
What is John?
Physical.
Yes, no.
Go ahead, John.
So John is affection.
In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Okay, guys, we gotta get up through this.
Not 2 minutes.
Yeah, I know, right. So Cindy, what is Cato's love language?
Quality time.
Cato, what is Cindy's love language?
Affection.
Well, we are the same one, so we know what to do to make each other happy. Here we go, China. What is Vermont's love language?
Affection.
What is her love language?
What's happening to quality time?
Appreciating words. Say it.
No, before that.
It was caring actions. Caring actions.
Caring action.
Hers is you gotta show you care. Is that right, China? You want to see it. You want the actions to be here. You want to see it here. Okay, what is my love language? Just say it and go to camera. Yeah. What is my love language?
His love language is actually 2. It's split. Definitely the first one is affection, but only after 11 o'clock at night.
Jesus.
Am I lying?
Keep it real.
I gotta
1
keep
minute.
it real.
So
You're down here from 9 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. You come home, we eat dinner together, because that's one of my things. I want us to eat together as a family.
and then I study.
And then we look at TV, and then we go to bed, and then you turn on something, and then your love language pops out.
But what I'm saying is, Marsha.
I don't mean like that.
What I'm saying,
Your love language term. I just have to be me. And you know who I am. I can't fake it to make it.
So anyway, guys, that's the X-rated portion of our
That
broadcast.
wasn't X-rated.
And so, anyhow, I was going to tell you what I thought her love language was until she went into expose. But
What is mine?
I think you like appreciating words or caring actions.
I like
So-
quality time and caring action.
So guys, I hope you got something out of this. Again, this is Pastor Duncan saying thank you guys for being on tonight. I want to appreciate you being honest tonight and talking to our group. And we ask you to tune in. This will be on our Facebook. And please leave us some words in the chat if this helped you. God bless you. Have a great night.
Hope it helps everyone. Bye.